In the early stages of the creative process, many children will explore still, and that's not something that we're ever going to get away from. Adults explore when they're warming up. They noodle on their instruments or they noodle with their voices or whatnot. That's exploration. When I send kids off into small groups, it's really not a small group at first. It's an individual. And the individual will explore, possibly sing something, reproduce it on an instrument, and that will be their thing that they add to the whole. So what you have is more of a stew of sorts than a soup. You can see the little chunks in the sectionalized form of things, but it's not a whole. And when we're raising the level of sophistication, it needs to be seen as a whole at its inception. When they first come up with these ideas, it needs to be a whole piece instead of, that's cool, why don't you just put that right there? Again, this is fine, and yet if we're trying to increase children's level of sophistication in how they approach music, then we need to encourage something more. Listen to the last piece. The gentleman created it together instead of separately and bringing things together. Notice the level of sophistication that the children are using. Notice that there are predictable phrase cadences, there's predictable punctuation at the end of certain sections. Notice that they're even having an improvisation solo time for each instrument towards the latter half of the piece, maybe 2/3 of the way through the piece. So there's a little cadenza or solo improvisation with each instrument. Notice also that most of those improvisatory aspects incorporate one or two of the rhythmic elements that has been used throughout the piece. This is a very highly sophisticated piece relative to the other music making in class, and to help children to encourage children to use more sophisticated ways of envisioning and creating their music, I need to provide them models, and the strongest models happen to be students. We learn by conversing. We share information one to another. In our room, we share musical decisions, the choices. We share music and we have conversations about why we made those choices. The boys chose to have these little solo improvisatory elements in their larger piece. It was a willful decision. So now the pedagogical ball is passed to me. They make a choice, an informed choice, and what am I going to do about it to help others increase their knowledge and understanding of how music can be, the scope of their imagination, what music entails, and at the same time highlight what the children have done. Since the boys have created a piece that uses trading fours, using a jazz term, it would be appropriate for me to go and select music that had that in it as well. One of the things that I want you to think about is the fact that engaging in child-centered learning and moving the level of sophistication of the music that your children make ever higher, they begin to see, or I hope they begin to see, Beethoven and Bach and Brahms and Stravinsky as kindred spirits. Everyone is a musical artist of varying skill levels, and yet we are all kindred spirits. We all have music in us, and that we're getting that music out. Look at what you did. Now look what, or listen, should I say, listen to how Bach does the same thing. You did this really cool thing, and now listen to what Prokofiev did with a similar idea. Kindred spirits. Sophistication, ever increasing the level of sophistication in your classroom and your expectations of what your children can do will bring them joy that you feel in those aesthetic moments. Music is cool. Make it sophisticated.